Welcome to the Mean Lady Talking Podcast. This is the podcast that tackles tough questions about relationships, life, love, and loss. It may not be the advice you want, but is probably the advice you need. And now here's your host, grief therapist, motivational speaker, relationship expert, best-selling author, and attorney, the not really mean lady herself, Susan J. Elliott.
Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Mean Lady Talking Podcast. My name is Susan Elliott, and I am the host of your podcast. Today's episode number 12, which is the last episode that I pre-recorded. And when I'm saying pre-recorded, I mean before I looked into exactly what I needed to launch the podcast. I had spent months researching everything from equipment to software, how to do this, how to do that, how to use a distribution service, etc., etc. And somebody said it's good to have 5 to 10 episodes ready to go before you actually launch a podcast. So what I actually did was I came up with a few episodes in the beginning, and every few days I've been uploading another one to see where things go. I've been playing with editing. I've been playing with, let me try this way, let me try with that way. Sometimes I forget tags or descriptions, so I've been trying to document exactly what the procedure is for getting everything set the way that it needs to be set in the most efficient way. Putting a podcast up is a lot of work if you're doing it all by yourself and if you're doing it twice a week. Most people that I spoke to before I even thought about doing the podcast said that they usually run 2 to 3 episodes a month and they don't do it on a regular basis. That's not saying your big podcast where you have a production crew behind you, but I'm talking about fairly successful podcasters who do all the podcasting, all the editing, all the uploading, everything by themselves. So I wanted to see exactly what went into getting a podcast up and running. Now, I've been pulling letters from Mail We Got Mail that were answered and sent to me over the blog's 12-year history. And what I promised for today is that I'm going to try to do as many letters as I can. I'm going to try to do a few short letters, a few short answers, see where it goes. But this is it. I don't have anything left after this. So, I mean, I have older letters, but I really would prefer to answer things that are more current, that is a pressing situation, a problem for someone who's a reader, someone who is a member of the Facebook group, someone who's just now reading the book, someone who's just now tuning into the podcast. So please, 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 I will not use any identifying information. I won't use your age unless your age is pertinent. You know, if you're 22 and you say I'm 22 and I'm afraid I'm never going to have children, you being 22 is kind of pertinent to my response. But you live in small town USA that no other town in the entire world has the name of this town, I won't use the name of your town. So I won't use any identifying information that I don't absolutely need. So please send me email, send me questions. Questions from the questions post is usually a 1 or 2 sentence questions, very general. When am I going to get over it? Or bad to not want to be alone, etc., etc. So questions from the questions post and Mail We Get Mail. Please send them to meanladytalkingpodcast@gmail.com. If you're brave, you could just put it on the Facebook group. I'm going to open a topic in the next few days. Ask your questions here. And I also invite you to go to the Mean Lady Talking Podcast Facebook page. There's a zillion ways you can tweet at me at Mean Podcast on Twitter. Just give me a question, give me a situation, give me whatever. But for next Friday, I need some questions. So please let me know. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to try to do 5 questions, short and sweet, on today's podcast. We'll see how it goes. Okay, speaking of which, this is one from a younger reader. I'm 21 and in college, and I still want to have fun and date when I'm ready again. I have a couple of questions. Are casual hookups okay from time to time, or is that considered unhealthy? Do happy and healthy college-age guys even exist? It seems to me like we're all at an age of experimentation, finding ourselves, and I feel like if I get back to dating, I won't find somebody who's happy, healthy, and mature until I'm in my 30s. What are some things I can try to do to balance everything out, especially with how busy things get in school? I feel like my schedule is always changing, so I won't have time for that one night a week all to myself that you suggest. I feel like I don't have enough time to do self care and self cultivation if I'm studying all the time. Okay, so that's a nice, short, sweet question, and it's fairly pertinent. And I think that it's also pertinent for people who aren't 21 and in college. I think that 21 is very young. And you might not find a healthy guy until you're in your 30s, but don't rule it out. I mean, there are guys who are happy and healthy in their 20s. It is important for you to have one night to yourself. I did it with a full time job, a 2 hour commute each way, 3 kids, and several nights of therapy, meetings, support groups. I did it. There's no such thing as I don't have enough time for self care. If you're too busy for self care, you're too busy. For me, it just started out with a bubble bath. I mean, that was where it started. And I would take a bubble bath, I would deep condition my hair, I would turn off the phone, and I would go to bed early reading some fiction. I had a stack of self help books by the side of my bed, and I just ignored them on the nights that I took my bubble bath and deep conditioned my hair. Then I started to get up early on Sunday mornings, and one of the things that I've never talked about is that I was riding along one day. I was working in Massachusetts and I was riding through Framingham, Massachusetts. And not Framing, anybody who's familiar with Framingham probably thinks of Route 9 where all the shopping centers are. The first mall in the United States was built in Framingham and it was still there. I think it was Shoppers World. And it was still there when I first started working in Massachusetts. I think they tore it down later. They built a gigantic mall there. Because of course Route 9 needed another mall. But I'm talking about the town itself of Framingham, like the old Framingham. And they still had a pretty robust main street. And I was driving through there one day, and I don't know why. But one of the things that I did was I would just take off and start driving someplace just to see what was out there, just see what was around, something I still do. And I think that there are so many things that have made us stupid over the years or have really narrowed us instead of being a technological advance. It's really done a number on our ability to think for ourselves. And GPS is one of those things because I know so many ways to go places, and GPS just makes people take the longest way. Sometimes I'm watching someone follow GPS and I'm thinking, why are you going this way? This way is so stupid. But anyway, I have always done this and I always will do this. I just take off and I just start exploring towns, looking around, how to get here, how to get there, how to go this way and that way. And I remember I was driving through Framingham and there was this bicycle shop there. And I stopped one day because I'd wanted a bicycle since I was married and my father had passed away and my mother was in the hospital and our house was broken into. Yeah, all those 3 things happen in 1 week. I'll go into that in some future podcast. But I had a really nice bike that was stolen, and I had only ridden it like 2 or 3 times because it was March, and I believe I had gotten the bike for Christmas, and there wasn't too many warm days that I was able to use it. So I'm driving through and I see this bike shop and I stopped and I went in, and the man who was in there was one of these old, like he reminded me of Geppetto of Pinocchio. He was just a man who'd been selling bikes forever. And he custom fit this Schwinn bike to me. It reminded me when I got my first Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson lowered the bike. They put on short shocks. They put on handlebars. They put on all kinds of things for a person who's 5'1" would be able to handle this motorcycle. And this guy did this for me with a bicycle. It was a wonderful bike, absolutely wonderful. So I paid a lot of money for this bike, and it was a lot more than it would have been if I had just walked into a department store and gotten it. But it was one of these self-care things because I really, really wanted to get into better shape. I wanted to do it with something that was fun. I already belonged to a gym. So I started to get up early on Sunday mornings to go for a bike ride. And I eventually got up to doing 10, 15 miles a Sunday. I mean, it was wonderful. And there was a lot of internal thoughts that went on. I talked about feeling very sad sometimes, feeling very alone. But I grew so much on those Sunday morning rides. And I made sure that I was up before the kids, I was out riding my bike, and I made it home. The act of buying the bike, the act of having the bike fit to me, and then the act of getting up early every Sunday morning to ride the bike, they were all actions of self-care, and they became very, very important. So on Thursday nights, I then started adding things to my repertoire. I started adding expensive bubble baths. I started to add expensive towels, expensive sheets. I started buying expensive comforters. I made the Thursday night routine a very spectacular from where it began as just a bubble bath. I would do a home facial, I would do a home manicure, I would do all kinds of things on Thursday night. Later on, I started going to a spa or a massage once a month. It's something that you build on. So start with a little bit of self care and start building on it. Now, as for hooking up, this is how I see it. College age kids do wacky things. I was a college age kid who did wacky. My own daughter was a college and freshman one time and she did wacky things. But this is what I told her. And I didn't tell her this just because she's my daughter. This is what I told her because this is what I believe. 1, value who you are. Don't get into any friends with benefits situations and try to avoid one night stands. If you are having a one night stand and you contract a venereal disease, it's so much worse than if you were with somebody, they cheated on you, you were in a committed relationship, they cheated on you, they brought back a sexually transmitted disease. You don't want to regret both the one night stand and the sexually transmitted disease. Always use protection. Always have birth control. Do not sleep with a guy who refuses to use protection. You don't want to be saddled with an STD from a guy you hardly care about or hardly know. The other thing that I told my daughter is one night stands do happen, but it's best if it's a decision that you make, not something that happens in the heat of the moment or because you're too drunk for it. Make sure it's a decision that you've made and not one that you make too often. The next thing is that you have to know that getting into friends with benefits situations have consequences, especially for women. If you do decide to go that route, and I adamantly advise against it, know that you may be fooling yourself as to the reasons why and that you can handle it. Many girls think that they can be friends with benefits and have no emotional attachment and not let it erode their self-esteem. My experience over all the years that I've been doing this is that those girls are the exception and not the rule. Girls in friends with benefit situations tend to wind up feeling used no matter what they say to the contrary. So if you hook up, do it with a clear idea of A, what it is you're doing, B, how much you want to do, and C, who you want to do it with. Don't make it an oopsie without clear understanding of what is happening. Don't be dumb about it. And as for hookups after the age of 25, I do think it's unhealthy and I think it's dumb. Can I tell you that I never hooked up after the age of 25? No. But I can tell you that there are very few hookups that I engaged in, and about 99.9% of them I absolutely regretted. Okay, question number 2. After spending 7 years with a lying, cheated banana head, how do I really learn to trust again? Not only other people, but myself. I hate to admit this, but I thought that all men lie. I think this is my way of protecting myself. By telling myself that all men lie, then I can avoid getting hurt, and I expect them to lie to me. But I want to live my life with an open mind. I want to trust people. I don't know how, after being hurt by someone who I thought loved me, would never lie and have my best interest at heart. Okay, so my answer to this is you can't trust people just because you want to. People have to earn your trust and prove that they're trustworthy. But you can't not trust people either. You can't live your life with an open mind unless you go into new situations with new people, understanding that you really have to observe people and you have to be able to trust yourself. You have to be able to see red flags and not ignore them. You have to commit to leaving upon the first sign of lying or infidelity, and you have to be so secure in yourself that you know how to choose properly. This is why I emphasize the standards and compatibility inventory in getting back out there, because you can't start that when you're ready to date. You have to do it long before you're ready to date. And you have to commit to the idea that if anybody winds up on the unacceptable thing, if you see any of the red flags that you have outlined, in the standards and compatibility inventory that you will leave. You have to spend time committing to doing that. You cannot possibly trust anyone else if you can't trust yourself, and you cannot trust yourself if you have not committed to leaving the first time you suspect that someone is lying to you. All men don't lie, and many men are trustworthy because they think that cheating is wrong and they don't want to do to you what they don't want done to them. It's not just lip service that they pay, they truly believe it. If you're secure in yourself and you have honed your observation skills, you'll be able to spot the person who believes that. If you keep your standards and boundaries high, if you've done your standards and compatibility inventory, you'll be able to avoid being carried away by that initial flutter and be able to step back and figure out who this person is, who this person really is, not who they're pretending to be, not the best foot forward, not who you think you're seeing, but who they really are. That is not to say that anyone is capable of anything at any time isn't true, because many times it is. And I remember when early on in my newly dating career, after my first divorce, I started to think anyone is capable of anything at any time. I've seen people swear up and down that they would never do X, Y, and Z and then turn around and do X, Y, and Z. And they rationalize it and they justify it. They not only rationalize and justify what they did, but they rationalize and justify why they told you they would never do it. I knew a divorced woman who was seeing a guy for a few years. They had a great relationship. She didn't really want to get married again, but he had never been married and they were living together. So when he asked her to marry him, she didn't see why not. But being healthy, she thought that she should talk it out with him. What is marriage going to look like? What are they thinking about? What's going on? She asked him, and this story isn't getting back out there. She asked him, if we ever hit a rough patch, will you go to counseling? And he said, yes. Her ex-husband had refused to go to counseling. He said that what was wrong with them wasn't fixable and just flat out refused, and they wound up divorced. So she wanted to know that if they ever hit a rough patch, that this guy would go to counseling. She didn't want to be divorced twice. So they got married, and about 2 years on, they started arguing for no reason. A lot of relationships go through this. Sometimes it's growing pains. Sometimes it's working out an issue that you've never had before. And when she said that they hit a rough patch, it wasn't terrible. I mean, what she told me about it wasn't awful. It was nothing serious. It was nothing that couldn't be fixed. It was just a rough patch that they had never been in before, where they had been arguing fairly often, and they just hadn't had a relationship like that before. So after a few weeks of this, she sat him down one night and she said, we really need to think about going to marriage counseling. And he said no. And she couldn't believe that he said no. She said, but you promised me that. Like, you said that. That was one of the things that was holding me back from marrying you, was that my ex said he wouldn't go to counseling. And now you're saying you won't go to counseling. And she said, I don't see how we're going to get past whatever it is we're in right now if we don't go to counseling. And he said he didn't want to work on things. I mean, flat out, didn't want to work on things. She said you could have knocked her over with a feather. She was thinking, who is this guy? She absolutely could not believe it. I mean, they had been together about 5 years at this time, and she said the person standing in front of her was a total stranger. She said, you told me before we got married that if we ever had issues, you would go to counseling with me. And he said to her, I know it's easy to think that you will when you don't have to. He said, I'm tired of the relationship, and I don't want to work on things. And she was thinking, who says that? Like, this is a marriage we're talking about. She had children from her first marriage. She said, we have a house together. We have a life together. My kids look at you as their stepfather. We have pets together. We go to work together. They had one car and they commuted to work. They worked in the same place. She was thinking, like, you're going to tear this whole thing apart? He said that he felt like he needed to go to counseling for a few of his own personal issues. And he didn't feel like going to counseling for that and the marital issues. She couldn't believe it, but ultimately she had no choice but to accept it. She felt really resentful that she had married on a promise that he refused to keep. But she realized that it was in the past and it was neither here nor there. A few months later, she moved out, and a couple of years later, she met someone else. And this guy was wonderful. I mean, truly, truly wonderful, put together, functional. And they've been together for 10 years and they haven't needed any couples counseling. So when I talked to her about it, she said that she thought that her ex truly believed what he said at the time. And he had never lied to her about anything else in the history of the relationship. There wasn't someone else. And after they broke up, he explained to her that he just felt like he needed to go off on his own for a while and figure a few things out. Like one of the things was he wanted to go live in a part of the country that he knew she'd never live in. Now, he didn't share any of this stuff with her. All these things were going on in his head that she had absolutely no idea about. He thought that maybe he was going to quit his job and take a lesser paying job and go back to school and downgrade his lifestyle. And he felt like, she has the kids, she wants the house. She's never going to agree to this. And he wasn't really sure what it was he wanted. He just felt like anything he thought about wanting, he didn't think she would agree to. He had this whole thing going on in his head. And I said to her, do you think he would have agreed to any of that? And she said, how do I know? He never gave me a chance. And that's very unfair, very unfair. But she said that she knew the guy that she was with now would never do that to her. He wasn't going to put this whole new thing in his head. A lot of people will not think, well, maybe I want to downgrade my lifestyle. Maybe I want to go live in this place where I know my spouse doesn't want to live. A lot of people won't even let themselves go there because they know I'm part of a couple. I'm part of a life. I don't have any right to decide to go off and do this. One of the things I talk about in Getting Past Your Breakup is that a breakup affords you the opportunity to do things like that you always wanted to do. But you're not supposed to put the cart before the horse. You're not supposed to say, oh, I want to go live in an area of the country where I know my spouse isn't going to want to go, so therefore we should break up. But that's just selfish. It's selfish, it's childish, it's irresponsible, and it's stupid. This guy built up something in his mind as to why they should break up, and then his unsettledness was manifesting itself in these new arguments that they were having. So you can't predict things like this. This guy had some kind of midlife crisis and he didn't want his wife to go along for the ride. He may have been sincere in his previous assertion that he would go to counseling, and then he promised to love, honor, and cherish till death did he part on his wedding day. He meant all that. He swore up and down he meant all that. The bug that bit him later on is a somewhat common one. Many people are mature enough and responsible enough to say, it's not fair to my wife to suddenly want to run off across the country, to quit my job, to go to school, to live in a hovel. Others will discuss it with their spouse who may or may not be on board. And others might discuss it, the spouse objects, and they forget about it. Is what it is, depending on what you want and need at the time. You can tease out the facts before you move in with somebody. You can tease out the facts when you are seeing somebody. What would you do if? Have you ever thought about X? And see if you can observe them and see if they've ever thought about it. You won't be able to cover it all. You won't be able to predict it all, but you can base it on things that have happened to you in the past. But you can't even predict if somebody's answers will stay the same. But you can ask them, what does it mean to you? If you're asking me questions tonight, if I have the same answers 5 years from now. Because what they will expect of you is what you could probably expect from them. My husband Michael had said to me on one of our first dates, hey, suppose someday I'm diagnosed with terminal brain cancer and I only live 11 months, and in those 11 months you have to change me, feed me, medicate me. You'll watch me wither away and slowly die, all the while taking the very best care of me and giving me all your love and devotion. Well, our medical bills pile up and you have to hire in-home caregivers, and those bills will just about bankrupt you. Our daughter's college savings will be gone, our life savings will be gone, and during this time the economy tanks and our house is worth less than half of what we paid for it. Then you'll have to raise a grieving teenager and try to help her get into college while she's completely bereft and you are crushed with grief. Hey, what do you say? You want to go out with me? I would have said, no way, not me. Go away, go stand over there. I don't want to do it. I don't want to sign up to be with somebody who's going to die on me and leave me with a grieving teenager. What are you kidding me? There are no guarantees. You can only do your best. One of the reasons why I got through Michael's illness and death was because I knew how to trust myself before. And I knew I got through this before. You can only trust yourself to repair your broken chooser and pick the person who's a pretty good guy. By observing him and asking the right questions and honing your skills so that you're not carried away by lust or hormones or a cute face or winning smile, you can get to be a pretty good read if you do your work. And then when you feel that you have a trustworthy person and you could be pretty sure that you'll be okay no matter what, you might have a winning combination. But you cannot depend on someone else to stick around. I mean, I had a man who adored me, would never leave me, and he didn't stick around. I mean, it wasn't his idea to not stick around, but he didn't stick around. You can never be 100% sure that something's not going to happen. That's just the deal. You have to trust yourself enough to choose wisely and then be strong enough to handle whatever happens. The only one you ever need to trust 100% is you. You're picking your gut feelings, your questions, you're observing, you're noting, you're acting on red flags, you're looking for the right things and not falling for the wrong things, and you're understanding that nothing in life is guaranteed, but you are strong enough to deal with whatever comes along. Trust yourself, and everything else falls into place. Okay, next question. I was married for 23 years to a man who cheated throughout the marriage. I left him 7 years ago and have no feelings for him. 4 years ago, I met a lovely, kind man, but overlooked the fatal flaws because he was faithful. I was soon to find out he was a compulsive gambler and alcoholic who wet the bed when very drunk. He did that about 7 times during our relationship. He doesn't drink much during the week, only on weekends with his friends. We've broken up several times but keep going back because we love each other so much. He has always promised he would change and I would go back thinking that he would. Earlier this year we had an argument about his drinking and I didn't hear from him for 2.5 months. He came back when he heard I had coffee with another man. Don't know how that happened. He did try very hard to change, but in the space of 2 months, he drove drunk, wet the bed, and gambled. I broke up with him again. Why am I so devastated? I know it's for the best, but I miss him so much, especially our first Christmas without each other in 4 years. I feel as if I'm stuck as I think of him constantly, yet when I'm with him, I'm unhappy. I love him, but I can't live with all of his problems. He has very lovely ways, but can't seem to beat his addictions. I'm in counseling and have read your wonderful book. I guess I know the answer to my question from your book. As I said, he has a lot of very lovely ways, but he can't seem to beat his addictions. I'm currently in counseling and I'm reading your wonderful book. I guess I know the answer, but I would be interested in hearing it anyway. Okay. First of all, lovely men do not wet the bed or drive drunk. I'm sorry. Period. End of story. Let me repeat. Lovely men. If you write a paragraph about a man and it includes drove drunk, wet the bed, another adjective that should not show up in that paragraph is lovely. No one is lovely when they wet the bed and drive drunk. Do either or of those things, but both of them, not so lovely. No one who wets the bed is lovely. No one who drives drunk is lovely. Period. End of stories. Those 2 things should be grounds for immediate dismissal from your life. Goodbye. Bye-bye. I don't care what other traits he has. If a man wets the bed or drives drunk, let alone both, you need to say, see you later, loser. Not, oh, honey, you're very lovely. There's only one answer. See you later, loser, banana head. Get out, get out, get out. That's the only answer. The only answer. You need to run away. You need to run far away. There is no such loveliness in the entire world wrapped up in gold and filled with sugar kisses that could possibly make up for a drunken driver bedwetter. Are you kidding me? I could swing a cat and come up with some lunatic who's a better catch than that. Alcoholics promise the sun, the stars, and the moon. That's how they string you along. You're probably devastated because you thought that he was something that he's not. Or you had hopes and dreams that he was something that he's not. Or you thought that he would shape up, but he won't. He's not shaping up. Missing him at Christmas is a matter of allowing your thoughts and emotions to go wacky just because it's the holidays. This guy is a complete loser. To get anyone better than him would not take a whole hell of a lot of effort. What you miss is a fantasy of what you think he could be without his loser traits like getting drunk and wetting the damn bed. You can miss him all you want, but I suggest you stay away from this person and that you continue counseling and go to Al-Anon. I would love to be on a fly on the wall of you walking into Al-Anon and saying, hello, my name is, and I was with alcoholic so-and-so, and he wet the bed and drove drunk, but he had some lovely traits because the entire room, I guarantee you, will burst out laughing. Oh my goodness. And the next thing they'll say to you is, honey, keep on coming. Keep on coming. Ha ha. So you got to stay away from this loser. Go to Al-Anon, tell your story, give them a good chuckle, and take good care of you. I'm serious. Okay, last one, short and sweet. Dear Susan, I have been told by so many of my friends and even a couple of therapists that I can't move on until I forgive my ex. But I'm so angry. I don't understand how to forgive somebody when I still have this level of anger. Yet people keep telling me that forgiveness will lighten my soul and heal me. I don't know how to get there from here. Please help. Okay, I hear so many people give so much stupid advice on forgiveness. It makes me crazy. Forgiveness is not something you do in the beginning. Forgiveness is something that starts after we've done our grief work. You're angry. I don't know what you're angry about, but your anger is fine to have wherever you are with it. You have to talk about it. You have to journal about it. You have to work through it. But you cannot get to forgiveness if you're still feeling that angry. You have to allow yourself to do the grief, to feel the feelings of grief. Then you have to do your relationship inventory. You have to examine the relationship and feel the spectrum of emotions. Forgiveness does not start right away. Forgiveness is not some quick cure, some race to healing. Okay, forgive. I mean, what are you going to do? Run outside and shout to the world, I forgive you, I forgive you. Will you feel forgiveness? Because you probably won't. Forgiveness is the end, not the beginning of the process. If you're stuck in not wanting to forgive and that not wanting to forgive is keeping you from moving on, then you have to look at your relationship with forgiveness. Because sometimes people are angry and bitter years after they've had the loss or the breakup. And at that point, they can't forgive. And at that point, something's wrong. And at that point, friends and relatives and therapists and well-wishers should be saying, yo, like, move on. But not if it's new. Not if you're still in your grief work. Not if you're still in your anger. Forgiveness is for you and your healing, not for anyone else. Forgiveness can and should be done in stages. Maybe today you can forgive 10%, maybe next month another 10%, maybe 6 months from now another 5%. It depends on what you're doing with all the things that you're angry about, all the things that you're hurt about. Have you worked through them? How have you worked through them? Sometimes you can do your inventory and 6 months later you realize you have to do it again. It's really tough to say. I really like Clarissa Pinkola Estes' writings on forgiveness in Women Who Run with Wolves. There's a chapter called Marking Territory, the Boundaries of Rage and Forgiveness. And in that chapter, she says there's 4 stages of forgiveness. 1, to forego, to leave it alone. 2, to forbear, to abstain from punishing. 3, to forget, to aver from memory, to refuse to dwell. And 4, to forgive, to abandon the debt. To forego means to take a break about thinking about the person or the event for a while. It's not leaving something undone, but rather it's more like taking a vacation from it. This prevents us from being exhausted by it, and it allows us to strengthen ourselves in other ways and to have other happiness in our lives. To forbear. This builds focus toward the time when one goes to the next step. It doesn't mean to go blind or dead and lose self-protective vigilance. It means to give a bit of grace to the situation and see if that helps. Forget. This means to let go, to loosen one's hold, particularly on memory. To forget doesn't mean to make yourself brain dead. It's not conscious forgetting of letting go of the event, but it's letting go of the insistence that it stay in the foreground. Forgetting allows it to be relegated to the background, to move it off stage. This is called conscious forgetting. And when we practice conscious forgetting, we refuse to summon up the fiery materials. We refuse to recollect. It means not having to haul up certain materials and turn them over and over and over again in this endless obsession that we do sometimes when we're really angry about something. Conscious forgetting means willfully dropping the practice of obsession. It's about intentionally outdistancing and losing sight of it. This kind of forgetting does not erase memory, but it lays the emotions surrounding the memory to rest. To forgive. There are many ways to forgive a person, a community, a nation for an offense. It's important to remember that a final forgiveness is not surrender. It's not, I forgive you for the hurt you did me. It's a conscious decision to cease to harbor resentment, which includes forgiving a debt and giving up one's resolve to retaliate. Sometimes we're holding on to anger because we think that we're entitled to it. This person hurt me. And if I'm not angry anymore, that sort of relieves them of something. But it does. What they did to you was wrong. It will always be wrong whether you have feelings about it or not. You being angry at them really has no effect on them whatsoever. But you have to decide that this person is no longer in your debt. They did something terrible to you. They hurt you. You're angry about it. And you would like something from that, even if it's just holding on to your anger. But at some point, you have to let it go. At some point, you have to realize that your anger belongs to you and it's not doing anyone anything except you. And in order to be healthier, you have to let the anger go. And you have to let it go today. You don't have to let it go tomorrow, but you have to let it go in stages. Just as you forgive in stages, you let anger go in stages. Some people choose a blanket pardon. They release a person from any restitution now or ever. That means like, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm not dealing with it. I'm not going to be angry about it. I'm not going to be hurt about it. I'm just letting it go. Others choose to just let it go from here on in. Whatever's done is done. Whatever has happened has happened. And another way that people do it is they let go without the other person ever acknowledging that they ever did anything wrong. And that's probably the forgiveness that is the hardest to come by, when the other person just refuses to acknowledge that they did anything wrong. Forgiveness is the culmination of the foregoing, the forbearing, and the forgetting. It doesn't mean giving up one's protection, but it means giving up one's coldness, because there's a certain amount of coldness to staying in the anger, to not forgiving. Forgiveness is an act of creation. You choose any number of ways to do it. You can forgive for now. You can forgive till then. You can forgive till next time. You can forgive but give no more chances. You can forgive but get the hell out of my life. You can forgive part of it. You can forgive all of it. You can forgive half of it. You could forgive everything that this person ever did because they have no brains, they don't know what they're doing, and you just can't deal with their nonsense anymore. You get to decide. You get to decide how much, and you get to decide when. And how do you know if you've forgiven? You tend to feel sorrow instead of anger. You tend to feel sorry for rather than angry with. You tend to have nothing left to remember to say about it all. I bet if you're very, very angry, you could go on and on and on and on and on about all the things that this person did to you. You probably have a litany of injustices that were done against you and that you're still angry about. But when you've forgiven, you really have nothing left to say. You don't want to talk about it. You can't even remember, what did I get so worked up about? You know you've forgiven when you're not wanting for anything. You're not waiting for an I'm sorry. You're not waiting for an apology. You're not waiting for this person to wake up from the great deep sleep of dysfunction. There's no lariat snare around your ankle stretching from here to way back there. Forgiveness means you're free to go. There may not have been a happily ever after, but now there's a fresh once upon a time. When you come to a majority of forgiveness, and I've talked about my first husband, where I forgave him everything that ever went on between us. I just didn't forgive him for what he did for my kids. It just took a really long time. And he passed away a few years ago, and I still feel resentful at that. I still get furious about the fact that he didn't even make an effort to talk to them before he passed away, and he knew that he was dying. So I don't know. I'm still working on that. But if you're so angry and you haven't done your grief work, you haven't done the relationship inventory, it's way, way, way too early to forgive. But don't listen to people who go, oh, forgive them, you'll feel so much better. You will feel better when you forgive on your terms. Do exactly what I just talked about. If you want to read an absolute wonderful book, get Women Who Run with the Wolves, and it will just give you so many great answers to so many great things. When I first read her thing on forgiveness, I was blown away. I thought, this is great. But you forgive in your time. Just make sure that you're not holding on to the anger and bitterness, and that you're not refusing to forgive because you think that if you forgive, you're giving up something that you don't want to give, or you're anointing this person with, it's okay, whatever you did. What they did is wrong. It will always be wrong. Hurting you is wrong. The way they behaved is wrong. That's carved in stone. It doesn't matter whether you forgive or you don't forgive. That's the way it is. And you deciding to forgive them or not forgive them won't change how wrong it was that they treated you. So get to forgiveness for you on your terms when you're ready. And don't let somebody try to talk you into forgiveness before you're ready. But examine really where you are with that. Anyway, listeners, this is Susan Elliott, Mean Lady Talking Podcast. That is it. That's the end of the pre-recorded podcast. If you want new Friday episodes, I need to have some input from you guys. So please, please, please let me know. And take care of yourselves. You can do this.